This is a Socialist News and Views special interview.
I'm Nick Schillingford, coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this special interview. So, on Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm James Radek. I'm revolutionary socialist and anti-police activist, anti-fascist, anti a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
Founder of the Denver Communists and Firebrand, and yeah, I don't know what else. He, him,
Fantastic. No, that's all.
please.
That's all good stuff. And yeah, when I first reached out to you, when I first connected, you on August 4th, you had an article that was posted on Firebrand Communist. I don't know if it was cross-posted at Denver as well, but I saw it first on Firebrand, I think. And it was called "Why Marxists Need to Understand Social Reproduction Theory." So I just wanted to start out for listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with that. Do you want to just talk briefly about reproductive labor and then social reproduction theory, kind of just like the intro piece here?
Sure. As communists, we're normally kind of introduced to productive circuits of capital, like going into a factory and making
Right.
widgets and, having our surplus labor exploited and turned into profit. But there are additional circuits in capitalism that are necessary for the system to continue, and that we call social reproductive labor rather than productive labor. Um, and social reproductive labor is basically intended to reproduce and replenish the worker. So reproduce meaning making babies and raising children and training students and training workers. Um, uh, th- and then replenishing meaning uh, housemaking, all of the tasks involved in rest and relaxation and food and clothing, shelter, which have traditionally been feminized labor and unpaid. Uh, the bosses have, figured out a way to privatize labor that they need. Um, Working class families typically play this role of meeting most social reproductive needs, though some of them are socialized, like, if you go to a park,
Right.
uh, if you go to public school, some amount of healthcare is made public.
Mhm.
So some of these roles are paid, some unpaid, generally underpaid if paid at all, because this is feminized labor. It's been labor that's been assigned mostly to oppressed women. So
And just on what you were saying, quick, some of those things that you're saying we do have, they might be getting clawed back as we speak, as we're seeing with
oh
the
yeah,
federal government. They gave us a few public spaces and a few things, but it's like they can't even stand to see us have that.
right, right.
Anyway, sorry,
Right,
continue.
the social reproductive circuit, which it's weird. I'm using that word a lot. I don't know that I even use it in my article, or
You do. I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm
There's a
like,
good, actually, I pulled a quote out. It says, just to kind of encapsulate where we're going here, it says under capitalism, human labor power is focused on making commodities to be sold for profit. Um, Labor power itself is commodified in the process, and it's the only commodity, and this is talking about that is produced outside the circuit of commodity production. So, like you're
okay,
saying, you've got all this like capitalist system with here, and then they're kind of like if you've ever seen the movie The Corporation, which I don't know, but they talk about externalities. So it's kind of
Oh,
like an
sure. Yeah.
externality. They're pushing it off of their plate, and they're saying, "Here, working class, you have to
Right.
deal with this yourself and figure it all out. We're not gonna we're not gonna help you. Just
Right.
you're gonna have to solve this issue. That you have to bring more people into being and take care of
Yeah.
them." And yep,
I mean, we should be paid for shopping.
yep,
And this has been a long time demand. Like the wages for housework has been is a historical women's liberation demand. Um, but those wages could apply to, yeah, like I like to say shopping.
right,
Like not only are we not anti quote unquote consumerist, but but we should be paid to consume.
right.
Uh,
And
uh,
even some of
uh,
the mainstream women's organizations took up those demands in the past, and they've pretty much jettisoned all. I was watching a movie, I think it was like National Organization for Women now, back in the
mhm.
60s or 70s. And it was like, wait a minute, I was like, am I watching? Is this a socialist presentation here? Because I mean, their demands were
Mhm.
pretty serious back then,
Yeah.
and like they don't seem to bring any of that stuff up anymore because we're in a different situation. But
Right, right. I mean, there's a different level of class struggle and a
right,
different level of influence that socialists had, because of that. So, but to your earlier point, yeah, the the capitalist class is constantly at war with its own social reproductive systems. Like
yep,
it's constantly undermining, which they need,
right,
that so but because of the contradictions of capitalism that we don't have a unified ruling class that is fully aligned in all its priorities. They're a
right,
band of warring brothers. They're competing with each other as well as primarily exploiting the majority class.
yep,
Uh, but they're constantly undermining systems. So, defunding schools and making like think about the coup against an already broken healthcare system that
right.
Obama accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah,
And I mean,
yeah,
all
just
these cuts now too are going to be just like it's like unimaginable, really.
I like to
And
use the phrase "America eats its young," which is a Parliament or maybe Funkadelic album
mhm.
song, just to describe that. I mean, whatever. It's just a song title, but it's a great song. But America eats its young. It's just to talk as a way of talking about like the way that the capitalists go after social reproductive
Right.
circuits. That yeah. So
And I mean, and then the fact that we're kind of we're the center of the like at the imperial core or whatever, so they have a real interest in keeping us keeping us well controlled, and they don't
mhm,
like it when we get even a little bit out of control. It seems like
mhm.
they I mean it's like anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of violence raining down on us right now, like social and systemic violence, and a lot of it hasn't even like we haven't even felt it yet. But I mean, just looking at like the gutting of like VA contracts and the cutting of all these
Yes.
medical things. I mean, that's going to have a huge effect. I mean, I work with people with uh, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and so all this stuff is going to continue to have a big effect on community of folks that have a disability, especially obviously if they rely on some form of state funding to help them
Right.
get
Social
some.
murder.
Yeah, exactly, and it's
Social
very
murder.
violent. It's
Yeah.
very violent.
And thank Luigi for putting concept of social murder on the
That's
kind of
true.
into mass consciousness, you
It
know?
is. Well, I want we should I want to talk more about this, but I was just curious. So you started your article with Inessa Armand, and
Mm.
I had just come across that same quote. I don't know, probably a few years ago. She's not super well known, hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Did you find anything else out interesting about her when you were looking into this article or looking into what she did?
Oh, geez. Um, It's been a while,
I
to be
was just
honest.
glancing at her Wikipedia page before I got on here. I guess apparently she came from a pretty good family, I guess. Um, but yeah, and apparently she was in an open marriage, and then she left the one brother to marry the other brother because he was a communist, or well, he was for the
Nice.
cause, as it was more kind of like framed in the time. He was like for the cause, and the other brother wasn't. So
Good for
then she
her.
was able to,
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. So she, it sounds like she came from pretty okay
She was a
background, and
Bolshevik. She was a Bolshevik and made great innovations in the around women's issues, in the early revolution,
yeah, because
Um,
she started something within the like a department or something. What was it called? Um, let me look
you
back at
got the
her.
Wikipedia page
No,
open.
I got your article now because you said it in the beginning. I'm going to look at it now. But I did that. Oh yeah, the department devote. Oh, I guess it just says the department devoted to women's issues. And she had made the following observation, as you say in your article: if women's liberation is unthinkable without communism, then communism is unthinkable without women's liberation. Um, and so then you say neither is possible without the other. But yeah, so she was one of the people that kind of established this department looking at women's issues. You say in the article, well, this is a little bit of a paraphrase, but it's basically, a precondition for women's emancipation is the destruction of the family hearth. Can you talk about, this, this birth till death, reproductive labor that women are doing, essentially throughout history, but in some places more than others?
Yeah. Uh, that's a quote from Trotsky, to destroy the so-called family hearth. And he said that the revolution made a heroic effort to do that. And he's using, militant language, which is great. And we do intend to, abolish the family, but not in some decree from above
Right.
type of way. Um, it's more about abolishing the necessity of the family as an economic unit in society.
Yep.
Um, so, certainly, like I think under socialism, no one would try to stop people from organizing in family units. That's really not what it's about.
Right.
But right now, the family is a necessity, and it's an economic formation that is, necessary for survival for most people, um, uh, and inescapable for most people. And we want, as communists, to provide an escape. And so, the early Russian Revolution made great efforts in that by socializing what was previously privatized by the family or in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, laundry,
Right.
and we have, partially socialized social reproductive care, as discussed, schools and stuff, but we need way more.
Right.
Nurseries, you know, uh, basically, yeah, social dining halls.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why we should each have to cook our own food in our own homes all the time,
Right.
or, rely on private restaurants and that kind of thing. So, anyway, just imagine the freedom of, and also that, we question that there's something. That there's anything natural and eternal about uh, the nuclear family arrangement. That's not how humans have organized themselves
Right.
throughout history, and it causes problems, and um, it sanctifies the privatization of social reproductive labor, ideologically. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I encourage folks to check out the article. I just wanted to, I was gonna kind of, So one piece in the article, and it's something I've discussed this because this is, I agree that, this idea, this class reductionist, perspective that, oh, we just should focus on class issues or whatever. Like, I strongly agree with that. But I think, there's definitely still a group of people that, potentially well-meaning people that still seem to think that, that like we have to just like focus on these class issues. And so I guess, I was reading in there, it said the Bolsheviks understood that a victorious socialist revolution was the beginning, not the end of the struggle to win women's liberation. Old customs and attitudes, what's quoted as the muck of the ages, don't change overnight. New generations must grow up without the ideological baggage perpetuated by class society. But backward ideas cannot change unless the backward social practices that produce those continuously reproduce those change. So I guess kind of a devil's advocate position, if we can't change the things until after we have if we can't actually win, let's say, like, women's liberation until we have socialism, why shouldn't we focus on the clear, just the naked, like, class issues? Like, what is the reason that we have to have, women's issues, trans issues, Palestinian rights, all these things? Why do we have to center this stuff? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure.
I agree. I'm just saying.
Sure,
like,
of course, of course. Well, I mean, first of all, the other half of that equation is we can't have communism without women's liberation. And as probably we're already on the same page about, this applies to all oppressions. Like, Armand's formula, no communism without women's
Right.
liberation, applies to all oppressions. So first of all, like as Armand's saying, we can't get there without confronting oppression. Uh, um,
I think,
and why not? And why not?
right.
Uh, they're intertwined. We can't build a fighting force. So one, they're intertwined. The problems are intertwined, and to the extent that I don't see, uh, uh, fighting over social reproductive issues or fighting against oppression as being anything but class issues. Those are class issues. um, uh, but they're intertwined. So that's the first part. Um, uh, Secondly, how can we build a fighting force against capitalism that doesn't represent the class that is, in conflict, that doesn't represent the working class, and the working class is oppressed, and is gendered and racialized and bordered and turned against itself in so many ways. Um, so, how could I, just to make it more concrete, recruit a trans worker to the revolutionary movement if I said, but forget about trans issues? We're gonna just, we'll deal with that down the line. How could I recruit an indigenous comrade? We have to take up those issues in the here and now. Okay, so number three, like, the fight against those issues is part of what is going to strengthen us to win the final fight and to recreate society, for the majority, and based on human need.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like, I think it's sometimes they get kind of thought of almost as like events, like, oh yeah, women's liberation done, socialism done, and they're both processes that are both kind of like intertwining with each other, like you said, and kind of relating, feeding off of each other, right? That, that you're fighting around these issues of women's liberation, like you said, it trains people how to fight, right? And then so then they have this like fighting spirit, and then they can fight for something else, and maybe that's a wage issue or something, something with money that somebody would imagine as, okay, this is a class issue. This is okay. This goes in the class box over here. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's another issue very much related to some gender oppression that's going on right now. We don't know exactly how these struggles are going to break out, where we're going to be able to have the most success. I mean, these are all things that are going to be ongoing. And yeah, like you said, I mean, yeah, because you have the socialist revolution over, it doesn't mean overnight that, all class distinctions are abolished, all gender oppression is gotten rid of. Like you said, this is like we're saying, this is a process. And so we have to look at it as a process. And like you said, yeah, what would be the, mostly a lot of people, I think, don't see those things as issues or as class issues because a lot of times people have kind of blinders onto that stuff, or they have privilege where they don't really have to deal with that stuff. So they don't see it as an issue. Right. So the other thing is like, every time there's some kind of like diversity initiative that like a company or something, they always say, oh, we got to get in these new ideas and these different people with different experiences. And we're going to really use that because that's what makes us great or whatever. And of course they always fail to even come close to doing what they say they're going to do, which is like using people's unique experiences to create this, this future and see how we go forward and stuff like that. But we actually can do that. We actually can have people come into a space, talk about, previous tactics, talk about previous strategies, talk about the way that they experience the oppression, where some of the weak points might be in like fighting back. We can take on all these important pieces that make up the working class that we have here, because we really can't fully understand, all these oppressions that we're going against until we have this full picture, which is why on this podcast, I'm always trying to talk to different people and get like, okay, what are you getting? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How does this work for you? Because if we're not doing that, that's one of our biggest tools, is that we have the people
Absolutely
on our side. I don't have $1 billion I can donate to anything, or I can't say if you register to vote for Trump or whatever, I'll give you $1 million. But I can try my best at, sharing strategy, ideas, tactics, giving other people a platform and an area to speak about their experience. What do you think?
Appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know if it was Trotsky who said that the Revolutionary Party is the memory of the working class.
Right. I believe it was.
But I consider Marxism in general to be a study of and synthesis of the lessons of the whole history of class struggle. And I include, and this goes back to the beginnings of class society. So we're not just talking about proletarians, and this includes all struggles against oppression as well.
Right.
So Nat Turner's rebellion is on the list.
We can learn things, right? What a crazy idea.
And so to me, proper Marxism represents the best lessons of the whole history of the struggle against oppression and exploitation. The multi-thousand-year history, whatever, 10,000-year history. And it needs to represent that, and we need to replenish our commitment to that, to trying to encompass the whole human experience in order to leverage the best lessons against this vicious system. So, yeah.
No, it's true. And I mean, on the flip side of that, if you just look at the capitalists, look at how hard they try to keep a lot of that information from us, right? Look at how hard they try to ban books, and they try to, just get something out of the curriculum, or just pave over, anything they don't want to have to look at, or any community they don't want to have to deal with. And so just the fact of how hard they fight to keep us from knowing that, it's amazing all these little pieces you find out. I mean, just, Inessa Armand, we didn't know about Inessa Armand, me and you 20 years ago, and now we do. And so it's like, there's all these little pieces. There's so many struggles that even I don't know about. And I consider myself to be like, relatively well acquainted with what's going on. But if it's outside of
Sure.
my time horizon, like we were talking about, a lot of times it's not in there, even if it's local, or if it's out of my like location horizon, and if it's something that's happening on the other side of the city, even, and it's not getting covered by the media, sometimes you just don't get it. So it's just amazing how
Sure.
much you can learn from talking to other people that are in the struggle, or that are starting to join a bigger struggle. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, as we are seeing struggles start to like come together in some ways, and we're going to see more of that, as well as
Yeah, I hope so.
and the opposite of that, which is when these groups try to make Palestine solidarity people leave or something, which I think they've been mostly unsuccessful at doing, in some of these protests against Trump and stuff. But I think we're going to see a little bit of that. But I think we're going to. I mean, it's just the nature of the thing that we're going to see this thing start to come together, whether we actually give any leadership or thoughts or whatever or not. It's going to happen. There's going to be some kind of like. I mean, it's going to get to a point where they're going to be big enough that in some way they're going to bang off of each other, and so it's either going to be in
Yeah.
a good way or a bad way.
Well, I mean, I
I
would
don't know.
say capitalism will continually reproduce crisis and
Yep.
problems for our
Yep.
class, and oppressed people. And so it will continually reproduce a fight back also. So
Yep.
those two things I think we can count on. But I don't think we can count on that fight back taking a socialist direction
No.
spontaneously.
No.
Like socialists need to intervene and try to make that happen. So, the connections between like labor solidarity with political struggle, for instance, and vice versa, social solidarity with economic struggle. Um, those are some things that we have to fight for. And, certainly those ideas are out there and people come to them spontaneously all the time. But, we have to, that's a big role for socialists. And, we're not well positioned to do it right now, but, you
No,
know,
we're not,
we're trying.
unfortunately. Yeah, we're doing our best. I mean, that's, in a sense, that's all we can do. Well, I really appreciate your time. I encourage everybody to read the article. We've talked about it a little bit, but the article lays out all the stuff that we've talked about here in a really nice format. Now that we've kind of given everybody the kind of some of the tools, just the last little bits to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. Anything else you want to share before you go about reproductive labor, or just about what's going on right now where you are, or really anything else?
I'm sorry I wasn't more prepared here.
That's all right.
I guess I would want to say that like with Firebrand, we do almost all of our political education on Zoom.
Mm,
And so I invite anyone who's interested in revolutionary socialist politics, Marxist, Trotskyist politics, uh, in particular, to check us out. Uh, we're starting a study group on a new book, or not a new book, it's an old book, but we're starting a new study
a new
group
study group on an old book. Yeah.
on an old book. It's called The Meaning of Marxism by Paul D'Amato. It's basically was sort of the quote unquote Bible of the ISO,
Mm,
uh, or I shouldn't say that, but like, an early text that we want
sure.
all comrades to read that kind of crystallizes a bunch of politics. We still use it. That's kind of controversial with some ex-ISO members,
Sure.
but we still consider, and it has problems, but we still consider it the best like 300-page foundational text to get people started with. So to get members started with.
Right.
This group is open to members and non-members though, and it gives a good foundational education in Marxism, we think. So check that out. That's going to be Mondays at, let me see, 8 p.m. Eastern, starting I think Monday. So uh,
Nice. So
whatever that
that
is,
so
September
yeah, when you say
15th.
Monday, you're talking about the 15th.
Yeah, September 15th. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, let's I'll definitely promote that, and I'll put any links or anything anywhere too, because yeah, if we can get folks to go to that, that'd be super cool. I'm sure folks are always looking for more ways to learn what the heck's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah. I hope so. And
I mean, there's
yeah,
definitely a lot of people that are bewildered out there. Well, I mean, there's even people on the left. I mean, it's a terrifying time in some ways, in many ways,
yeah.
and there's definitely people that are bewildered and they're looking for more perspectives. So this is great.
Yeah, great. Yeah, good point. Yeah, and we think in this time that political education is a central task. So,
Same.
we also think you should do it as a group if you can, and you can.
Yeah, exactly. Starting on the 15th, we'll include a link. Yeah,
So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Nick. I
yeah,
really appreciate you talking to me.
fantastic. Thanks, James. And that's our special interview. Thanks for listening. Solidarity.
This has been a Socialist News and Views special interview.